Welcome to today's lesson, guys, on two-step equations. Hopefully you've already looked at the one-step equations, so you should have a good grounding of the very basics of equations. We're going to jump straight into it. Today we're going to look at a two-step equation, which looks like this. 2x plus 3 equals 7. Now again, like last time, sometimes you might be able to see what x is going to be equal to, but obviously the more challenging questions, it's going to be a lot harder. So we want to follow that process that we were talking about last lesson. Now, here, again, we have to look at what is the whole aim of this equation. Well, my whole aim is at the very end of this equation, I'm going to have x equals, and then I'm going to have a number. Okay, so I'm going to find out what x is equal to, so that 2 times x plus 3 is going to have a value of 7. But this is a two-step equation, so that kind of gives you a hint that there's going to be 2 steps to it. It's really important that we write these steps out. So like last time, we want to eliminate the number. Now in this case, last time we had like x plus 3, so there was only one number. Now we have 2. We have this 2x, there's 2, sorry, in front of the x, and we have this plus 3. So we have to get rid of both of them, but we can only go in a particular order. So the way I look at it is I look at the number that's most alone, most by itself. You know, I talk about the scenario where you have 2 people on one side of the room, one side on the other side of the room. You have to pick on one of the 2 groups. Who would you pick on? Well, obviously you'd pick on the person by himself. Okay, I know it's probably not the best analogy to use because I don't advocate bullying, but in this case, it helps me think about it because the 2 is joined with the x. So he's harder to remove, or the 2's harder to sort of pick on. So the one that's completely by itself is this plus 3. So he's the one I'm going to get rid of first. So I'm going to change him to the other side. How do I do this? Remember that rule we said. If it changes sides, it changes signs. So if I chuck the 3 over to the other side, well, what's the opposite of plus? The opposite is minus. It's very important to do this next step. We're going to rewrite this equation now. Okay, I've only got 2x left on the left-hand side. Now I've got 7 take away 3. Well, 7 take away 3 is equal to 4. The best thing now is I'm back to a one-step equation where I've got 2 times x. I'm going to pretty much I know that x is going to equal 2 just by looking at it. But if I went to do the proper steps, what's the opposite of times 2? Because it's 2 times x. Well, the opposite is divide by 2. So 4 divided by 2 equals 2, and I've got my x equals. And obviously that was the aim, as you can see from the bottom there. And the good thing is I can now check my equations. Well, what's 2 times 2? That's 4. 4 plus 3, in fact, equals 7. So I can check that. And you don't have to write that out, but often if you check that in your mind and you're using that little brain calculator of yours, it's a very quick way to see if you're right or wrong. Okay, so let's have a look at another question. Look at x over 3 plus 4 equals 6. Okay, so again, like last time, I want to have x by itself, so I've got 2 numbers. I've got the 3 and I've got the 4. Well, the 3 is kind of with the x, isn't it? Okay, it's kind of like one's upstairs, one's downstairs, but the 4 is the most by itself. So let's get rid of the plus 4. How do I get rid of plus 4? If it changes sides, it changes signs. Opposite of plus we know to be minus. We said last time it's really important that we rewrite the equation each time. So we have nothing left on the left hand side, so it's x over 3, and we know that 6 take away 4 equals 2. Alright, so that's my first step. Now my second step is to get rid of this divided by 3. How do I do that? Well, remember, if it changes sides, it changes signs. The opposite of divided by 3 is times by 3. So I'm now simply left with x equals, well, 2 times 3 equals 6, and look at that, x is now by itself. I can double check that. X divided by 3, or 6 divided by 3 equals 2. 2 plus 4 equals 6. Yep, it's true, it works out. Okay, example 3. Okay, this question is going to be quite similar to the last one. I'm going to have x over 4. Now the whole thing this time will be divided by 2 equals 5. Okay, so last time that we had the x over the number, now the whole top part is in a fraction. So we start this question the way that we do every other question. The whole idea is we want x to be by itself. So I've got two numbers here that I need to get rid of. I've got the plus 4 and the divide by 2. So which one can I get rid of first? Well, let's go back to that scenario of who is the most alone. Now the 4 usually is the most alone. It looks the most alone. But in this case, he's kind of upstairs with the x as opposed to the 2 who's downstairs. So actually this time the 2 is the easiest one to get rid of. So how can I get rid of divided by 2? Well, remember the saying, if it changes sides, it changes signs. So the opposite of divided by 2 is times by 2. Remember, it's really important once we do that first step to clean up our equation. And that's going to be our first step. So x plus 4 is left over, and 5 times 2 is 10. Now we come to our very last step, which is a nice easy one. Opposite of plus 4 is minus 4. We're left with x equals 6. Now, like before, we can quickly just substitute that back in to make sure it's correct. 6 plus 4 equals 10. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Yes, that's correct. Okay, we're nearly there, guys. Okay, now for the last example, guys. Example 4. Okay, now this will look very similar to the ones that we've done, but there is going to be a slight difference. A slight difference. Okay, so it looks the same. Alright, so we go through the same process. We have a 2 and we have a 5, which we need to get rid of. So which number is completely by itself? Well, in this case, it's the plus 5. Okay, if it changes sides, it changes signs. So the opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. Let's clean it up. 8 take away 5 equals 3. Alright, so it looks like we're nearly there. We only have one number now to eliminate. Well, it's 2 times x, so what's the opposite of times 2? Well, it's divided by 2. Now, if I've got a calculator, I could go ahead and I could work that out to be 1.5. However, I'm going to show you a little trick, which this works every time. If we can't divide a number so that it is an actual whole number, hopefully you remember that divided by sign, the divided by is the same as a fraction where it's the over sign. So actually what I'm going to write, instead of writing 1.5, I'm going to just rewrite it as 3 divided by 2. And that saves any problems about having to use a calculator and that type of stuff. Okay, so it's simply just replacing the divide by sign with an over sign. Now obviously if it works out like a 6 divided by 3 equals 2, whole number, okay, then you'd work it out. But if it comes out to be a fraction, okay, or not a whole number, just replace the divide by sign with an over sign, and it's as easy as that. Hope you found this useful, guys. Any questions, post it on the website or let me know.